Okay, good morning, everyone. So today I'm here with Carmela Pirillo. So she's the CPA Amazon expert in Canada, and I invited her today in order for us to ask like all the questions we have for Amazon selling, right? Especially a lot of you are maybe like in your first year of Amazon selling, so this is the perfect time for us to ask her questions, right? Thank you so much, Carmela, for being here today. I really appreciate that despite your vacation, you're here and you're willing to help us out to answer
Absolutely.
all our accounting questions. Okay, so before we start, I would like Carmela to introduce herself so you guys would know her better. And if you're interested, you can talk to her privately if you're interested in her services, which I'm going to mention later on.
All right. Well, thank you again for inviting me to kind of be part of your group and to answer the questions that the sellers have. I've over the past, I guess, 3 years now, or almost 4 years, I've been working with sellers very closely, answering their questions. I do see a lot of common questions that come up. So hopefully today we can cover some of those. I've been an accountant for 21 years. I had to calculate that this morning. I'm thinking, wow. So for 21 years, I've basically dealt with small businesses only, because being a small business myself, I know exactly all the pain points that, my clients are going through, and I can help them through that. I have been a seller. So from 2016 to 2018, I was an Amazon seller. I'll be honest, I didn't like it. And so I decided, let's stick to accounting. But that experience kind of exposed me to Amazon and all those little quirks and aggravations that we've kind of had to deal with. And of course, the accounting side of it, because I was in charge of getting our tax returns done. So that's allowed me to help my clients, which is why I decided to get into the e-commerce and Amazon selling space. So I've got a team now. I've been on my own probably until 2019. And then because of the big growth that my firm experienced, I do now have a team. We're a team of 3, plus myself is 4. And, I am very proud of that team, and they kind of deal with my clients the way I would. We do tailor some of the services, some of the interactions, because everybody's different. Not everybody is the same. And so they don't respond to the same way of I guess, speaking and in training, especially. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for the information, Carmela. Okay, so let's start the ball rolling, right? So
okay.
A lot of the people in this group are actually, I think, on their first year of Amazon selling, and hopefully everybody is, have the at least sole proprietor, because that's what I always recommend. So with that, I'll start with the questions. What are the advantage of sole proprietorship in the first year of your a seller's Amazon selling, right?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is your cost, right? I know when you're starting a business, any business, there's a lot of upfront costs, startup costs, and especially with the Amazon, it's not a service-based business, right? So you have to buy product, and that's an added expense. So if you start off as a sole proprietorship, you do reduce your tax filing costs for sure. Like there's a significant difference between sole proprietor and corporation costs. So I think that's the biggest thing. And you know what, you don't really know whether it's going to take off, right? So I would suggest start out as a sole prop, see how that goes. And then, decide whether you're going to invest in incorporating, because incorporating, that's also a fee, right? So there's just added costs with corporations.
So when do you think they should start incorporating? Like when is that time? Like Some people will
Yeah.
think, okay, I'm starting to make sales. Is it a good idea to already start to incorporate, right?
Yeah, that's a really, really popular question. And unfortunately, there isn't one answer, right? Because like I said, everybody's different, and our needs are different. So what I normally advise is if this is a side gig and you've got a full-time job, then incorporating would make sense, because if you don't incorporate, then any profit you're making as a sole prop will be added to your other income, right? So that's the number one thing I kind of try and get from my clients. The other is, let's say it's not a side gig. Let's say, it's your only source of income. Then what you need to consider there is whether or not you need any of that money that the company is generating to live, right? So if your profits, are $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, but you have to use all of that to pay your living expenses, then incorporating isn't going to benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different levels, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to look at the personal finance as well as the business. You can't
Yes.
just look at the business.
But if the company is growing and there's more money in the company that you won't even use for personal, that's the time that you should incorporate.
Yes,
right?
for sure. Because, I mean, just as an example, in Ontario, the corporate tax rate is 12.2%, whereas our personal tax bracket starts at 20%, right?
Mhm.
So there's a big difference already.
Let's start with the questions, okay? So from Gina, so it says, Carmela, can you please talk about the reports you ask your clients to pull at the end of the year and where to access them in Seller
Right.
Central?
Yes, okay. So this is always confusing because there are how many reports? Thousands of reports?
Yes, so many reports.
So we've narrowed it down basically. So you'll need, the most important is your sales summary report. So that I've got it written down because obviously I don't have it memorized where we can find it. And I can share this with Cheryl if you want to share it with the group after.
Yes, please, that would be good.
Yeah, so we've spent, I'm going to say, the last 4 years trying to refine this list. So you've got your seller fee invoices. Now, this is important only if you're registered for HST or GST, because those seller fees include GST, HST that you've been charged by Amazon. And you want to make sure that when you report your HST return, you're claiming all of those back. I've had some clients who miss that. And depending on your sales, right, it could be thousands of dollars that you're missing out on. So that's the seller fee invoices, sales summary, and then your payout. So the reason why we need your payout statement, and we don't need them all, we need the one at the end, at the very end, because your Amazon reserve account has a balance, right? And we need to reflect that in your balance sheet. So that's a little bit more for corporations. So it's a little bit more technical, but really those are the reports you need: the seller fee invoices, the sales summary, and the payout statements.
So that's the most important.
Right. Then there's this inventory report. And the one thing that you really should take into consideration every single month is your inventory. What do you have left at the end of the month that you haven't sold? So if you're having your bookkeeping done every month, you're reconciling your bank, your credit card, you're putting your sales and fees in, but you're not dealing with your inventory balance, then your reports don't mean anything. They are not telling you for sure whether you're making money or losing money. So this inventory report is really, really crucial. If not monthly, then at the end of the year, your accountant should be asking you for an inventory report. Because the reason behind that is any goods that you have not sold yet cannot be expensed. they're actually an asset still. They're an inventory asset. So those are the reports. Like I said, I'll share the instructions on how to download them with Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for a more detailed one, so once Carmela have it, gave it to me, I'm going to share it to the group so that you can see the step-by-step on how to download all these reports, right? So for those who opened a sole proprietors but are interested in incorporating, can you talk about that tax advantage moving from sole proprietor to incorporation? So I think similar to my question, but maybe there is more maybe advantages.
Yeah, so I mean, the most obvious one and the reason why almost everybody does it is for the tax advantage, and that is huge. We all want to pay less tax in the end, right? So apart from that, sometimes getting financing or applying for grants is easier as a corporation versus a sole proprietorship. If you ever wanted to transfer the business to someone else, you can't transfer a sole proprietorship because the sole prop is you, right? But if you have a corporation, then you can actually transfer the ownership to another individual. That could be beneficial, you know, if you're married or, you know, you don't want to do the business anymore and you want to transfer it to a friend, you know, so it's just easier to do that. So those are the other benefits of incorporating.
Yeah, so I guess also for those like doing private label, if they want to sell the business,
exactly, yeah,
you need to be incorporated in order for you to be able to do those kind of transactions. So thank you so much for that. So how does tax prep work for people who sell on both the US and Canada market? Is there anything that they need to prepare like separately because they're selling in the US?
Yeah, okay, so as you know, I deal with the Canadian side of things. I don't prepare US filings. So if you're Canadian and, you know, obviously if you're Canadian, you have a sole prop that's Canadian, but if you also have a Canadian corporation, your requirement to file is here in Canada. So whether you make sales in the US or in Europe or in Mexico, you file, you report all your sales here, your expenses, and pay tax here. With the US, there might be some filing requirements, you know, some returns or, you know, information forms that you need to file. That depends on a lot of factors. So I always defer to Mohammed, who I know you've had here on your live. He's really knowledgeable. So that's how I deal with the US side. So he and I just kind of collaborate on that.
Yeah, so for those of you who didn't watch it yet, so I'm selling in the US as well. So check out my YouTube channel. There's a video there for Mohammed Akif, and he talked really in details about this. What are the forms that you need to file, even if you don't have a business in the US, but as a Canadian seller, we still need to file some paperwork. So you need to check that out as well, right? So okay, so another question here is that, hi, I want to ask how to see reports showing how much money Amazon deducted as its monthly fees. Which reports we need to show to accountant if we buy prepping materials like date gun, weighing scale, boxes, polybags, then are these included in business expense? If yes, then will business expense be remitted or our overall our tax will be reduced? So I think with the reports, so Carmela talked about it already earlier. So she's going to give us all the information on where to get all those reports that you need to give to your accountant. But in terms of those expenses, right? So polybag, boxes and stuff. Well, I guess I'm going to answer it because I know, yes, it's a business expense, right, Carmela? Yes. So if yes, this will be expenses that will it reduce the taxes overall?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, any tax, any expenses, as long as they're business, will reduce your overall tax obligation for sure.
Mm-hmm. So anything that you spend money for the purpose of the business, will gonna be tax deductible, right? Business expense, I mean, for in terms of this, right?
Yes, I'll say yes, but there are situations where not everything is an expense. So it's still a valid business expenditure, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
paying for the business, but sometimes it's an asset, right? So if you buy a computer, or if you buy, like, I don't know, some packaging machines, something like that,
Sure, right?
right? So it's not an expense. So if you spent, $1,000 on this, you don't expense it the first year, you get amortization every year. So that the amortization is your expense, but it's spread out over a certain number of years.
Okay, so that's good to know. But it's still you still need to give all those receipts in order for you
Oh,
to
yeah,
get the benefit of it, right? Like for
absolutely.
example,
Always keep receipts.
yeah. So one of the big ones I think that we have are like computers, right? Printers. Those are the big things that we usually
Yeah,
spend on in terms of Amazon. That's the biggest expense. And I think,
right.
how about like, for example, if they decide, okay, we're gonna turn our basement into our office, they buy desks, chairs,
Yeah.
tables and stuff. That's considered as well as business expense, right?
Assets. Yes.
Asset,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So from Charm, so he says like, hi Carmela, can you please touch on returns? What happens to unfulfillable inventory or inventory that we can't sell anymore? Damaged, expired, unsellable, is that a business expense?
Yes, so it is a business expense. What I would suggest though, because your accountant is not going to know what's unsellable. They have no idea what your returns are, what, damaged goods you have. So when they ask you, what's your ending inventory? What I like to see is, so basically the total of what they have that's not sold, which includes all the unsellable stuff. And then, another line of total goods that are unsellable. So that way they can make the appropriate adjustment. What I like to do is, all the goods that you actually sold is your cost of goods sold, your purchases.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to have another line that says unsellable inventory or unsellable goods, because then you can see month to month, year to year, how much you're losing.
Yeah,
Right?
and
I mean, it's
actually there's a
important.
report. There's a report that you can pull out on that. That's what I do every year.
Yeah.
So there's a report that you can pull all this unsellable. It will say there, and then returns. There's returns. So usually also the things that you pull out from like for example, it's very common for us Amazon seller that really the product just didn't sell, right? So what can
Yeah.
you do? And then you pull it out. So I would suggest like download the returns, download anything that's like, the how do you call that report? The one where we pull our inventory and either ship it to us or
Oh,
we
the removal orders.
removal
Yeah.
orders. Those ones are the reports that you can get because everything in the removal orders is actually like either damage, returns and stuff. Just make
Right.
sure the one that you create removal order, you take out whatever the one that you considered for the returns, right? Because when you create removal order, either you dispose, you send it back to you, or you ask them for like if Amazon is willing, they would want to sell it for, and they will pay you a little bit, right? So
Mhm.
those are the reports that you need to take out, and also the one from, for example, from your prep center and from
Yes.
your house, because one of the things, like for example, with me, one of the things that I need to deal with is with the prep center, because I sell a lot of groceries. I can't like the prep center is far from me, so sometimes, like for example, wherever I'm sourcing, they would send a product that's close to expiry, and I
Mm.
don't have a means to return it, because to return it you need to go physically to the store. So
Right.
those are considered already business loss, right? Because
Yeah.
that's why some sellers don't want to even do groceries with prep centers, because that's one of the big issues that you end up having, is that like close to inventory, close to expiry, and then you cannot return, and then that's a big business loss as well. So those are the things that you need to consider when writing all this information for at the end of the year. Okay, so Lacey's asking, after working with so many Amazon clients, what are some of the most common mistakes that you were seeing newer sellers make when it comes to their Amazon business? I think this is a good question because you're the one who will know really what mistakes.
Yeah, so I'll have to say the biggest mistake, the one that I think has a bigger impact on you, is being registered for GST, HST, and not entering your 9-digit number into your seller account tax settings. So we know as of July 2021, Amazon is responsible now to collect sales tax on behalf of the seller, whether or not they're registered. So that's fine. But if you are registered, it's not Amazon's responsibility anymore. It becomes yours. So if you don't add your 9-digit number, Amazon has no clue that you're registered. So it's not going to give you in your payouts, they're not going to give you the sales tax portion. So they're going to remit it to CRA. And then when you file your HST return and you say that there's 0 HST collected, CRA is going to call you and ask for an explanation. And you have to prove that Amazon has indeed remitted on your behalf. So I'm happy to say that we've gone through some of those audits already successfully. So the client has not had to be, out of pocket, which was huge because, again, thousands of dollars, right? So if you never received this money, now you have to pay it out. So CRA has been pretty good about that, but you do have to go, there's hoops, right? You have to go through their hoops. You have to prove, you have to show documents, and knowing which documents and how to explain it is a big thing. So I'll say that's the most common mistake. I think the other one is more for, corporations is, so if you're using your personal credit card, which is fine, you use a personal card, I'd rather see you use the card just for business rather than mixing your personal with your business on that same card. The cleaner you can keep the distinction between the business and you personally, the better it is for you. Because during an audit, it could get pretty messy. And you don't want CRA having a look at, some of your personal expenses. They're there for your business only. Let me just see. I can't think. A lot of them are, Excel. I have nothing against Excel. Everybody kind of creates different Excel spreadsheets, and they do it in a way that is easy to understand for themselves. But it's not necessarily the best thing for tax purposes. So a lot of times we have to rework the numbers and the spreadsheet. And so that ends up costing, the client a little bit more than it really needs to. So what we do, we provide an Excel template. So, with all the expenses and by month, and then they just kind of enter everything in there and it totals it up for us. And everything is pretty clear. So that's something that we do to kind of get around that. So if there's one piece of advice, if you're going to do an Excel spreadsheet for yourself, for your accountant, it should be, it should have all the expense categories, and, by month isn't necessarily what you need, but it should have your total before HST or your GST, and then have another column for the sales tax and then the total amount. Because otherwise, it's kind of difficult because I deal with a lot of clients across Canada. So some are GST, some are HST, some pay PST. So it's nice if you are going to prepare something for your accountant to make sure there's a separate column for the sales tax.
Yeah, so basically they need to make sure that subtotal and the GST, PST, whatever is charged.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even a simple worksheet would be okay, as long as they separate the amount, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And I guess last one, I think I've mentioned it, but it is pretty important, is if you are registered for the HST, a lot of times the clients, when they do their own bookkeeping, they miss the input tax credit on those seller fees. And those can be a lot of
Very
money.
important. Yeah, yeah. So that's good. Like, so yeah, so one of the things that I think they really need to do is to ensure that all these are covered, because it's harder also for. So would you advise them to, like, for example, on their first year, to get a software already, like, or you don't doesn't need to?
So I like the software, because everything, once you input all your information, you can get really nice reports, and that could really help you manage your business. The only caution, is if you don't know bookkeeping, right? If you don't know the basics, I would highly recommend either trying to, YouTube videos. What we do is one of my bookkeepers actually does a Zoom call with them and shows them basically what they need to do. So we help them as much or as little as they need. Some people are more, experienced than others. I would highly recommend bookkeeping software. So we know that QuickBooks Online costs money every month. On that note, I do get a preferred discount on that because I'm a pro advisor with Intuit. So my clients can benefit from that. If not, I usually recommend Wave. So WAVE, Wave Accounting.
Yeah.
It's free, and it does the job. You can get the report. Yeah, you can get the reports you need from there. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know that it's not just QuickBooks. So for those who are starting, don't want to spend money yet, then Wave is also a good option. Okay, so you would say that because actually the follow-up question is, what stage of the business should a seller consider getting accounting software? So I think, like, if you're willing to learn it, right, and or you have a capacity to pay already, then that's the best practice is do it as fast as you can, so that everything is. And I think it's also good for CRA, right? Like, so for example, you get audited, all your receipts are just in one, that they can just go through it and everything is there actually, right?
Yeah, so I don't advise giving CRA access to your books.
Oh.
We don't do that because think about it. If they're auditing only 1 year, 2021, let's say,
they can see everything.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but at least with an accounting software, bookkeeping software, you can print the reports that they need, right? Because they like to see detailed transactions. So in a spreadsheet, unless you're putting them in there, there's no detailed transactions, right? So if you're going to go and do detailed transactions in Excel, do them in a bookkeeping software. And if you do them soon as you start your business, think about the learning curve. Sure, there's going to be one, but if you only have a few transactions per month to deal with, you can really wrap your head around those. And so then when they double or triple, you already know how to do it, right? So learning in the beginning with a small number of transactions is, I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, so with me, I really like that I can scan all the receipts, but I have a question for you. So if we are scanning already the receipts into the QuickBook, can we throw those receipts already, or we should keep it?
So what I would do, I would scan them and save them in your own filing system, right? Because remember, those receipts, most of them are going to fade. And if they fade and you can't show them receipts, they're going to disallow the expenses. That's just how it goes.
Oh, good.
I've had CRA do that. If you scan them and put them into QuickBooks, which sounds like an amazing idea, and it is, as long as you have your subscription, right? Because as soon as you cancel your subscription, you only have a certain number of months, I think, where you can still access. After that, it's gone.
So basically, you're going to be dependent to them if you don't have a hard, like another copy somewhere.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I would just keep a separate filing system and maybe just, upload them because it's easier for your bookkeeper. It's easier for you to find. But certainly maintain your own filing system.
That's a very good advice. Thank you for that. Okay, so is there a situation when you would recommend that someone just continue tracking expense in a simple spreadsheet?
Discontinue?
No, just
Or
keep on continuing. So instead, like, because for example, they really can't pay for, or like they're having, like with me, I have a hard time with QuickBooks, right? That's why I hired someone else. I can't wrap around my head on that. I'm good with Amazon, but not with this. So for other people who are also struggling with QuickBooks, is it okay to keep on just doing spreadsheet, like maybe like, I don't know, like after like 2 years, 3 years in the business, or would you really strongly recommend that after, like, especially during when they turn into corporation, to really go into software?
Yeah, so for a sole prop, whatever is easier for you, right? As long as you and your accountant are working together to understand, what the best format is for you, it's fine, right? But as soon as you become a corporation, Excel spreadsheets are worthless. You can keep them if you want, but your accountant or your bookkeeper is going to need all the bank statements, credit card. They have to put it into a bookkeeping software. And the reason for that is because not only do we need a profit and loss statement, we need a balance sheet that shows what your assets are and your liabilities are at a particular date. So Excel spreadsheets,
are not recommended for that. Okay, thank you so much for that. So another question is, it says here, as a new seller, how can we calculate our business tax by ourselves without using QuickBooks? Oh, I think this is the same. So basically, for now, you can use a spreadsheet, right? That you can have. Okay, let me see other questions here. So some people ask if you have to have a registered business to open an Amazon account. Actually, like I would answer this, you don't need to. You can do individual. If you're just trying, you can just have, just your name, as long as you have a bank account that you could do, because maybe you're just selling a book or something. You don't need to. But I think once you start to get serious with the business, it's better to register, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that's kind of come up recently, I think it might have been in your group, that someone was trying to put their HST number or GST number in their tax settings, but there was no option for that. And that was because I think he had an individual account rather than a professional account. So if you are registered for HST, I think you have to have a professional account in order to put in your number.
Yeah, and the difference between professional is individual is just that professional, you're gonna be charged monthly, and then with individual per sale, but they don't consider you as a business. You just get charged whenever you make a sale. So I guess that's a good learning. I did not know that as well. Okay, so why does Amazon send multiple seller fee invoice? Sometimes I get as many as 5, and credit fee statements. And do you require all for GST return?
So yes, all of them are required. But the reason why they send multiple, I think if you look at your sales summary on the right side where it says your fees, there's all kinds of fees, right? So there's seller fees, there are FBA fees, there's advertising fees if you're advertising on Amazon, and all the credit notes. Yeah, like it could be a lot per month. And unfortunately, we need them all because they all include an HST or GST portion that you want to claim back.
Yeah, so thank you so much. You mentioned grants. what kind of grants are available for Amazon seller or small businesses?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't, unfortunately, it's not a great answer, but I don't believe there's a whole lot of grants for that. If you are thinking of looking into grants, the best bet is to contact someone who is very experienced in that and knows exactly what would apply to you. I can't say that a lot of my clients have applied for any grants, so that's not really my area. Yeah, but there are lots of different businesses, companies that can help you with that. So you
I
just
guess,
be wary, right? Be wary, because some people, it sounds way too good. You might have to pay upfront fees. I would go on the government website first and do research there before reaching out to anybody.
yeah, so maybe just Google grants for small businesses, right? Type it in Google, see what, like maybe make sure that the link is from the government.
Yeah,
And from
yeah,
there, you can start looking at what possibility. Like I
for
never
sure.
also applied for anything, so I'm not sure. But I know, like for example, I think specific ethnicity or like
Yes,
right,
yeah.
like for example for women and stuff like sometimes they do grants to start.
Mhm.
So that would be a good idea as well. So can you give us a list of allowable business expense, please? Um,
Okay. Okay, we can start. So, there obviously your subscriptions, right? You've got Keepa, your seller board, all these
mhm.
good things. So make sure you've got that. There's, your telephone expenses, perhaps. Of course, you have to remember with telephone, with vehicle, and with your home expenses, only a portion can be expensed. But those are three that clients tend to forget. So just ensure, especially if you're doing online or online, maybe not so much, but retail arbitrage, you have to go and pick up the goods, right?
Mhm.
So there's those. You've got your advertising, you've got office supplies, right? To stock your office, your packing supplies, prep center fees. Now I'm seeing more and more virtual assistant fees.
Mhm.
So those are generally speaking what Amazon sellers can deduct. One thing I've come across during an audit, meals expenses. So meals expenses are tricky because we think that if we're going to pick up some goods at Walmart or Staples or wherever you're sourcing your products, and you're picking up a coffee along the way or, a meal, that you can expense that. And the answer is no, you can't, because meals have to be paid for in the course of your ordinary business in trying to uh, create income, right? Or earn income. So while going to pick up goods is a way, you are trying to, buying goods in order to create income, CRA doesn't look at that as a valid business expense, especially because it's just for you. So if you are meeting, let's say you're going into your private label or wholesaling, and you meet with a wholesaler, let's say you physically meet, and you pay for the meal, then you can expense that. But otherwise, e-commerce businesses, you're not going to have the same meals expense as a traditional, service-based business.
But how about those, for example, I used to do that, right? Like, for example, those who pack in my house, I treat them usually with food.
Yeah,
Um, so that's considered an
that's
expense,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
So you
because
buy
if
for
they're
them.
absolutely, if they're your employees and you're feeding them while they're at work, then
Mm-hmm.
that's fine.
Yeah, and also I think so for others, for example, those who are picking up UP, like there's UPS, because I also give this as an advice to sellers. Like for example, we have a UPS guy who comes all the time, And
Yeah.
to build relationship, we give them some sort of like, gift cards during like Christmas and bonus, like some sort of like that, right? Like that's also considered as expense. Am I correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And gift card for example, suppliers, you have a contact that you want to give like as a gift at the end of the year, so you have build better relationship. I think that's
Yeah.
also expense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just the gray area, or it's not even gray. The CRA says no, is whether or not, you're picking up meals for yourself while
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of, even if you've got a prep center, like, your back, your garage is your prepping area,
Mm-hmm.
and you stop to have a sandwich or something that you purchased
Mm-hmm.
at Tim Hortons. Yeah, that's not a business expense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, what is the best here? Sorry, I have like, can we keep gas receipts for business expense for those doing RA?
Oh yeah, for sure. So first of all, yeah, vehicles are a little different, the vehicle expenses. So number one, if you are using your vehicle for work, for your business, you need to keep a mileage log. So that's the number one thing that CRA will ask if they're going to be auditing those expenses. What I would suggest, I mean, you can use some apps. I think I have a client that just started using Mile IQ.
Yes.
He says it's so easy to use. I've never used it myself, but really, really easy. So that's what I would suggest, is either using an app or, tracking it some other way. But I think, some other way is going to be less consistent, right? At least if
Mm-hmm.
you've got it on your phone, we have our phones with us all the time. You're heading out. I think it tells you, you put in the location and it says, business or personal. So you keep that, like, make sure you have the log and keep all your receipts, everything.
Yeah, so Miles IQ, that's what I've heard, and also QuickBooks have that. Like they
Yes.
can also track it. So basically just turn it on, off, like it tracks where you're going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What is the best way to store your receipts? I have mine filed monthly, but do you suggest scanning them, or is there a good way? So Carmela already discussed it. It's better for you to just like scan them,
Yeah.
put them in another file, I guess. So with me, I do it in Dropbox. That's the easiest way for me to do it.
Yeah.
I do a lot of online arbitrage now. So what I do is after I buy online, I save the receipt, put it in the one of the Dropbox, and then dump it into my QuickBooks after. So can you provide us a spreadsheet template, please? Oh, like they're asking, I don't know if you're willing to share the template that you have for your sole proprietor template that you give to your clients. Is that okay or not? So it's okay, Carmela.
Yeah, that's usually I kind of keep it for my clients.
For your own.
Yeah.
And that's okay. So
I
unfortunately,
mean, I will say though, if you are, like, I can give you some information on what kinds of columns, what kinds of information you have. So you obviously you have all the categories. So some of the ones that I listed, and maybe there's more depending on your business. And then have monthly columns, and you just track your expenses that way with a total at the end.
So very simple, right? So I think I remember when I was still doing it, I bought an Excel sheet to another accountant, and then you guys didn't even use it because it's not your own, right? Like, so basically you have your own way. This accountant also have their own way. So from then, like, I just decided to do like a very simple one where I just separated all the subtotal to the GST, and that works already. Like basically for this, like expenses, all the expenses, inventory and stuff like that, right?
But so each category should be grouped together, because I have had clients give me Excel spreadsheets and it's mixing purchases with business, office expenses with Keepa stuff. That's really difficult to work through.
Yeah, so basically, for example, all just for inventory, one file or one folder, and then expense. So what are the categories? make sure that it's all separated, business expense,
Exactly.
car and stuff like those. Okay, thank you so much for that information. So Theo is asking, I live in Manitoba, can I claim PST on purchases?
Yeah, so I don't believe there's any option to claim the PST, unfortunately. You'll pay it.
Yes. So do you recommend opening PST, like even if you don't live on that province that has like PST?
No, see, because now if you're selling only on marketplaces, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you got Amazon, Walmart, I think Best Buy is a marketplace too.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're selling on these marketplaces, the marketplace tax collection rules come into play, which means that Amazon has to collect and remit the PST. So
Okay.
yeah, you wouldn't
So
register.
basically just GST that we need to apply for, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What amount of sales or profit to consider incorporation? I think Janet, you can rewatch this later if you didn't catch it, but Carmela already said, explain on when to get incorporated. It depends on case to case basis, basically, right? So for Pakisa, I want to ask that I have a business name registered in Ontario as sole prop new seller. Is it good to keep business name, or as a new seller, there is no need of it? Please suggest. I guess I'm not sure what's your question. So do you mean like you want to keep the business name, like whatever you have in your sole proprietor, for what, to be for your corporation to have the same name? I'm not sure. So
Okay.
I'm assuming maybe that's the question. Like, if you want to go to corporation, does it need to be the same name as your sole proprietor?
Well, I think it's good if it's the same, right? Because there's consistency. It's just whether or not that name's going to be available, right? Because as a corporation, you can't have the same name as another corporation that exists, right? So provided it's available, I would suggest keeping it the same.
Yeah. Okay. So with Marshall, so Marshall is actually from US, but she's asking, can you advise to a US seller who wants to sell on Amazon Canada and vice versa, a Canadian wanting to sell in Amazon US? What advice do you need, Marshall? I'm not sure. So maybe I could ask this question. So for example, she's from the US and she wants to sell on Canada. Does she need to register? Any advice on that for those who want to sell in Canada?
So I think that depends on the US and the IRS. I don't know what the rules are there. I would imagine that it's similar to ours, where if you're a Canadian selling in the US, you report in your home country, but you might have to file some documents with the other country. But I think she'd have to check with, either a US tax accountant. I mean, Mohammed might actually know, because they do have offices in Houston. So
that's true, right?
Yeah.
So you're not very familiar with this, because I'm not also sure
No.
how it works, but I know that there's a lot of international students in my group right now, and I asked them to actually call CRA and call immigration before registering, because they decide to register the business. I've heard like from them that they're allowed to do that, like to register. So basically they're still like, for example, for Filipino students, they're still they're international students here, so they're Filipinos, but they can register a business here. But I think they just need to file the taxes, right?
Yeah, so I mean, with a corporation, so non-residents, so someone that's in the US can own a Canadian corporation and file here. However, the tax rates are going to be a lot higher, right?
Okay, yes, because we have a different rate as compared to the US, right?
Exactly.
So I guess, Marshall, what you do is have an accountant who knows cross-border taxes also, right? like from the US, that who would know on how to deal with Canadian side? Do you also need to register? Or you just like us, we don't need to register anything, we just pay everything in Canada. So I think that's the best thing for you. So what's the fair amount to be charged for monthly bookkeeping and yearly filings? Are you
Okay.
okay to answer this?
Yeah. I mean, I can certainly provide a range of what you'll see. So if you're a sole prop, if you're doing bookkeeping, it could be same for both. So I'll deal with bookkeeping first. So whether you're a sole prop or a corporation, if someone is doing your bookkeeping, it's going to be the same, right? So I would generally, the way we kind of estimate is 1 hour per bank account per month. Now, of course, keeping in mind, if your bank statement every month is, 5, 6, 7 pages long, then it's going to take longer than an hour, right? But generally speaking, I see some sellers have like 2 or 3 different bank accounts. So if that's the case, then, that would be 2 or 3 hours per month. Put in credit cards, that could extend the time. So I'm going to say between 2 to 5 hours a month.
A month. And how much usually is the average now for bookkeepers, like per month?
I think the average you can do between $40 and up for a good, a good bookkeeper, right? I mean, because honestly, bookkeeping isn't just data entry, right? The data has to be correct. It has to be posted in the correct way. So there has to be a bit of knowledge behind that. So that's bookkeeping. For a sole proprietor tax filing, and remember, this is another thing where I see there's a bit of confusion. If you're a sole proprietor, you don't file your personal tax return separate from your business return, right? So your small business tax filing is included. It's part of your personal tax return. And so depending on where you are, what stage of business you're in, it can range between $400 to $800 per year.
Per year.
With a corporation, it's a little different because there's an option. You can have a corporate tax return, but you can also have financial statements, right? And so that'll take you between, let's say $1,400 right up to like $2,500.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that information. Oh, somebody is asked one question here. So it says, if the coaching course or paying for training are considered business expense.
Yes. So training, coaching, those are valid business expenses as long as they're directly related to your business, right? So you can imagine as a business and you're an Amazon seller and you might want to take, I don't know, like some sort of maybe you want to do some Reiki or massage therapy or something like that. So that training, that's not a business expense for your Amazon selling business, right? But provided we're talking about training like with Cheryl, that is certainly a business expense for
Okay, so what's a fair amount? I already asked this question. I have registered my GST, HST in Ontario and also entered in Seller Central tax setting. So will Amazon collect tax from clients and remit, or will I be accountable to filing tax on clients' behalf? So this is a good question.
Right. So so provided you've done everything and it sounds like you've done it correctly, you will be responsible to remit to CRA. So Amazon will charge it, will collect it, and then pay it out to you with your payouts, and then you're responsible to file it.
Yes. So in the report section, once you input those numbers, it will already show how much money they're gonna give you or they're giving you each payout, right? So would you
Correct.
advise, Carmela, for them? So for example, because it depends on the client, right? Like some have quarterly, some are
Mm.
yearly. So what is like the advantage of quarterly and yearly? And also, would you advise them to, like, for example, they do yearly, would you advise them to put it on a separate bank account to be like to keep, or what's your advice on that once they start getting all this money?
Yeah, so whether you're quarterly, monthly, or annual, I would always move the GST to a separate account, just so that you have it when you have to file. Keep in mind, as a sole prop, it's fine, but as a corporation, if that second account is not in the corporation's name, then that's basically income in your hands. So the two accounts have to be in your corporation name. So whether or not you want to be quarterly or annually, so annually is better. If you kind of hate the paperwork, because doing HST every quarter, that means your bookkeeping has to be done up to date all the time. So if you do it at the end of the year, then you've got a little bit more time. The downside of that is then you've got a whole year to deal with, right? And if you owe money, you have a whole year's worth of HST that you owe. Quarterly is beneficial, especially if you're getting refunds, right? Because you want the refund quicker. So if you're Canadian selling in the States, generally speaking, you're always going to get a refund because you're not charging tax there. So quarterly would be the way to go. I do have some clients who are monthly.
Wow.
Yeah. But that
That's
means, making sure by the 15th of the following month, you've got all the reports, the bookkeeping is done, and we file on time. Yeah, because you don't want to be late with your HST. You do not.
Yeah. So that's one thing that they need to remember, like you need to choose properly. So when you register for GST, they're going to ask you, make sure to decide what is best for you. If you don't have much time, you're so busy with life, then maybe annual would be best because you
Yeah.
don't need to like be pushed to like doing quarterly and then you don't have time to do it at all, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Marcel says, thank you. Could you get Mohammed contact info? So Marcel, so I interviewed Mohammed. Just check for my YouTube channel and all the information is on the description on that video and you can contact him directly. Okay, so I also want to ask whether training. So before I ask, so there's a few more questions. So since I ask Carmela up to 10:30 only. I'm going to just read all the questions that I have here. I think I have 3 more questions and then we're going to be done for this interview. Okay, so I also want to ask whatever training that we take and pay for Amazon. Oh, I already read that, sorry. Thank you so much, Carmela and Cheryl, for such an informative Q&A questions. I guess there's only one question actually. Okay, so hello, I have a question about taxes for different provinces. Amazon pays in bulk, but then should I declare to each provinces what I owe them? I am from Quebec, so I declare my taxes here. Or is it enough just to distinguish what is it for my province and what is it for the federal government?
Yeah, so if we're talking about income tax, then you file in Quebec. Right? So just like, everybody files in their own province. That's for your income tax. So that's your personal tax return. If you're talking about sales tax, so, GST, you have to file that in your own province, but that's a federal sales tax. So if you're collecting HST and GST from the other provinces, you only file in Quebec. So it all goes onto your GST return. Right? So same with someone in BC or here in Ontario, it's HST, but if you sell across Canada, whatever GST, HST you're collecting from those customers, you just file one. You can imagine if we had to file 10 different returns.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
And that's just
Okay.
because it's federal.
Thank you so much for all the answers. I think we really cover a lot of the most important questions that a lot of new Amazon sellers, especially, always want to ask to an accountant. And here it is. They got it for free from you. So thank you so much, Carmela. So before we end, would you mind giving the last words? Like, what is your advice to all the new Amazon seller, or for those of you the students here who are selling already, in terms of bookkeeping and taxes?
Yeah, so I think we've covered a lot of that, but what I do see frequently is that sellers are a little disappointed on their profit margin, right? So when you're sourcing products, it's you might source for anything above 20 or 25%, but by the time you factor in all your other fees, which doesn't come into play when you're sourcing, your margin can be like 10% or 4%, right? So I would, really encourage weekly or bi-weekly bookkeeping or some sort of record keeping to ensure that your margins are what you expect them to be at the end, not when you're sourcing at the end, right? Because if you're doing all this work, and it is a lot of work, if you're doing all that work for like a 2% margin, is it really worth it? I know there's a learning curve, right? So the first year you might lose money. I see lots of clients losing money, but that's with any business, right? You'll lose money the first 1 or 2 or 3 years. But I've seen many Amazon clients, the first year, they lose a little bit of money, and then the second year, it just blows up for them. Like they do so well. So I think you do get what you put into it, right? That's what you get out of it. So yeah, I wish everybody luck with their new venture.
So thank you so much. That's a good advice. So I guess to wrap it up, Carmela is advising for you guys to actually do your bookkeeping. I think it's best for you to be up to date with your bookkeeping in order for you to see if you're really profiting or not, right? So I know that a lot of, I recommend Seller Board, but I think Seller Board is there for profitability, at least to see, you might be making at least in each product, maybe 25% ROI or something, but at the end of the day, you need to see like after all those expenses, is it really like what's the net? And I think QuickBooks comes in handy with that, because at least with QuickBooks, if you update everything, then you can see your true profit at the end of the day, right? So thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. I hope you learned something from Carmela today, and we're hoping that Carmela can be here. So if you have any questions, or if you are interested with her service, Carmela, what are the services that you offer, and how can they contact you?
So we're pretty much like a one-stop shop kind of thing. We do, bookkeeping, we do tax returns, tax planning, we file HST, and you can reach out to me. My website, I don't know if Cheryl's gonna add there, but the website has a contact form, so it's carmelapirillo.com, or you can on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well. Those are the 2 ways, or email. So my email address is carmela@carmelapirillo.com. So hopefully, Cheryl, if you can just, because sometimes spelling my name, people might get it wrong.
So I'll put the information. So for those who are interested to get her service, just contact Carmela directly. She's also my accountant. That's why I always recommend, like, whenever people are asking me, I go for Carmela, because Carmela is actually my accountant. So for those of you who really need help and interested, especially now, right? You're taking clients right now. And I know that it's the best time to like reach out, because once things gets busy, like next year, then you might not have a chance to be accommodated as fast as you can, because they might be busy. So
Yeah.
please reach out to Carmela if you're interested. Okay. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much,
Thank
Carmela.
you.
And have a good morning.